Hello students, today we can see the topic light reaction of photosynthesis. Light reaction is also said to be as photochemical phase. Why is it called so? Because during this phase, high energy chemical intermediates are produced in the presence of light. That's why light reaction is also said to be as photochemical phase. It includes the steps like light absorption, water splitting, oxygen release and formation of high energy chemical intermediates like ATP and NADPH. ATP is adenosine triphosphate and NADPH is the reduced form of nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate. So these are the steps which occurs in light reaction. In the thylakoid membrane, there are two photosystems, photosystem 1 and photosystem 2. These are named in the sequence of their discovery and not in the sequence in which they function during the light reaction. So the first discovered photosystem is named as photosystem 1 and the second discovered photosystem is named as photosystem 2. What are these photosystems? These are the functional units for photosynthesis which contain particular pigment organization, and the function is to harvest light energy or absorb light energy for photosynthesis. Okay. So within this photosystem 1 and 2, the pigment molecules are organized into two discrete photochemical light harvesting complexes. Okay. So all the pigments present in this photosystem 1 and photosystem 2 will form separate light harvesting complexes. Okay. This is the light harvesting complex, and this light harvesting complex are made up of hundreds of pigment molecules bound to proteins. And in each photosystem, the light harvesting complex consists of hundreds of pigment molecules, and all these pigment molecules except one molecule called the chlorophyll A together form the antennae. Okay, so here you can see this, all these pigment molecules except a single, here this one is the chlorophyll A, except that single chlorophyll A molecule, all others together form the light harvesting system called as antennae. So what is this called as? It is called the antennae. All these pigment molecules are together called as antennae. And that single pigment, that is the chlorophyll A molecule, is called the reaction center. It forms the reaction center. Okay, the single chlorophyll A molecule forms the reaction center and all the other pigment molecules form the antennae. What is the function of this antennae? They help to make a photosynthesis more efficient by absorbing light with different wavelength. So different pigment molecules are there. So all will be absorbing light with different wavelength, and that light energy will be transferred to the main reaction center, that is the chlorophyll A. Okay. In PS1, in photosystem 1, the reaction center, that is the chlorophyll A, has an absorption maximum at 700 nanometer wavelength. Okay. In PS1, that is photosystem 1, the reaction center, that is the chlorophyll A, has an absorption peak or absorption maximum at 700 nanometer, and hence that pigment is said to be P700. While in photosystem 2, the chlorophyll A is having the absorption maxima at 680 nanometer wavelength, and so this pigment is said to be P680. Okay, in photosystem 2, the chlorophyll A is having the absorption peak or absorption maxima at 680 nanometer, and so it is called P680. Now we can see how the light reaction takes place. The light reaction will be initiated when the light photons fall onto the photosystem 2. So the light reaction begins with the photosystem 2 because the photolysis of water also takes place in photosystem 2, so that a continuous supply of electron can be done. Okay, that's why we can say the light reaction begins with the photosystem 2. Now the photosystem 2 is having the reaction center chlorophyll A, which is having the maximum absorption at 680 nanometer. Okay, so the chlorophyll A of photosystem 2 is having the absorption maxima at 680 nanometer wavelength. So it will be absorbing the wavelength of red light at 680 nanometer. As a result, what happens when more and more light photons are absorbed by this chlorophyll pigment, the electrons get excited. So the electrons will be normally orbiting around the atomic nucleus, isn't it? Now when more and more light photons are absorbed by this chlorophyll pigment, the electrons of this chlorophyll A get excited, and when it is excited, it will be jumping into an orbit farther from the atomic nucleus, away from the atomic nucleus, isn't it? So why it is jumping? Because it is energized, isn't it? How it is getting the energy? As it is absorbing the light photons, it will be getting more energy, and as a result it will be jumping further. That means it will be moving uphill, upwards. Upward movement always occurs due to the availability of energy. Okay, so as these electrons are having more energy now, they are at a high energy level, so they are jumping farther away from the atomic nucleus. Okay, now these electrons are picked up by the primary electron acceptor. Normally an iron sulfur protein is a primary electron acceptor which will be present on the outer surface of the thylakoid membrane. Okay, so this primary electron acceptor will be now picking up the electron. Okay, and that electron will not be utilized by this electron acceptor, but it will just receive it and then transfer it to the electron transport system. Okay, so here you can see the electron transport system. It is formed of different electron carriers like plastoquinone. PQ is plastoquinone, then the cytochrome complex, okay, cytochrome complex, then the PC, plastocyanine. So these are the electron carriers which together form the electron transport system. Okay, now the electron from the primary electron acceptor will be passed on to the different electron carriers like plastoquinone, cytochrome complex, plastocyanine, and at last it will be reaching the photosystem 1, that is P700, which is having the reaction center chlorophyll A, which is having the absorption maxima at 700 nanometer. Okay, so nowhere the electron will be used up in the electron transport system. Now when the electron is transported in the electron transport system, it will be moving downhill in terms of oxidation reduction or redox potential scale. What do you mean by it? It is moving downhill. Downhill movement is without the utilization of energy, isn't it? Now it will not be gaining any energy. Okay, so without gaining energy, now it is passing from one electron carrier to the another electron carrier. So when it is passing, when one molecule is accepting and leaving or losing the electron, that carrier gets oxidized and reduced, isn't it? When it is getting the electron, it gets reduced, and when it is losing the electron, it gets oxidized. So like that, the electron carriers will be oxidized and reduced, and at last the electron will be passed on to the P700, that is the photosystem 1. Okay, so when the electron is passing through this electron carrier, when it is transported through the electron carrier, nowhere it will be utilized. Okay, only it will be received and then passed on to the next electron carrier. Okay, and at last it is received by the P700. What is P700? P700 is the photosystem 1, which is having the reaction center, that is the chlorophyll A, which is having the absorption maxima at 700 nanometer. Okay, So this chlorophyll A is receiving the electron, and at the same time it will be receiving the red light of wavelength 700 nanometer. Okay, so it is receiving the light also. Now here also this pigment molecule also receives more amount of light photons as well as the electron, and now again these electrons get excited. Okay, when it is excited, again it will be moving away from the atomic nucleus, which will be received by, or which will be picked up by the electron acceptor. Okay, and then it will be passed on to the next electron carrier called the ferredoxin. Okay, it will be receiving it, and then that electron will be given to NADP. Okay, so what happens? This NADP will be receiving this electron, and then it gets reduced to NADPH and hydrogen ion. Okay, so NADP will be receiving the electron at last, and now it is reduced to NADPH and hydrogen ion. Okay, now the electron is completely used up. Okay, and for a continuous supply of this electron, water should be split. Okay, they will be continuously absorbing the light photons, and the electrons get excited and it will be passed, but at the same time a continuous supply of electron is required. So from where the continuous supply of electron is possible? It is possible by the splitting of water, or the photolysis of water. What is photolysis of water? Lysis means splitting of water in the presence of light. Photo means light. So in presence of light, water will be splitting. Okay, so this also occurs in the photosystem 2. Why it occurs in photosystem 2 and not in photosystem 1? Actually, this photosystem 2 is a protein complex. It is also having a complex formed of 4 manganese ion and calcium. Okay, so manganese ion and calcium ion will join together to form a complex which helps in splitting of water, and the photosystem 2 itself will be acting as a to help in the splitting of water. Okay, as a result, water will be splitting into electrons, hydrogen ion and oxygen atom. Okay, so when two molecules of water is split, then it will be leading to the formation of electrons, then hydrogen ions plus 2 atoms of oxygen, and these 2 atoms of oxygen will combine together to form oxygen molecule, and a byproduct of photosynthesis, that is oxygen gas, will be released out. Okay, now as a result of water, this electrons are continuously produced, isn't it? So this electron will be again used up for this electron transport system. So continuously the electron can be supplied in this electron transport system, and as a result, at last in the light reaction, what is produced? Two energy rich intermediate compounds are produced, isn't it? What are they? One is ATP and another is NADPH. Where the ATP will be synthesized? When the electron is transported downhill through the electron transport system, along with that hydrogen ions will also be released. That hydrogen ion will accumulate and it will be utilized for the synthesis of ATP. So what will be synthesized? Energy rich compound called ATP will be synthesized when the electrons are transported along the electron transport system. At the same time, hydrogen ions will also be carried, and that hydrogen ions will help in the synthesis of ATP. So thus ATP is synthesized. One of the energy rich compound called ATP is synthesized. Okay, synthesis of ATP, we can say it as phosphorylation. What is phosphorylation? Formation of high energy phosphates. Okay, so three high energy phosphates molecules will be joined together to form ATP. ATP is adenosine triphosphate, isn't it? So phosphorylation occurs. So this phosphorylation occurs in the presence of sunlight, isn't it? During the light time only light is trapped and these processes are taking place and ATP is synthesized. So this phosphorylation, we can say it as photophosphorylation. Why it is photophosphorylation? Because synthesis of ATP occurs in the presence of sunlight. Okay. Now, another energy rich compound which is produced is NADPH. Okay, so this NADPH, how it is produced? At last, when the electrons are transported to the electron transport chain, and at last it is received by the NADP and it gets reduced to NADPH. So thus NADPH is also produced. So the product of light reaction is two energy rich compounds, that is ATP and NADPH. Okay, two energy rich intermediate molecules are produced. They are ATP and NADPH. Okay, then this photophosphorylation which is taking place in this light reaction can also be said to be as non-cyclic photophosphorylation. Why we say it as non-cyclic photophosphorylation? Because the electron which is released from the photosystem 2 is not cycled back to photosystem 2. It is just transported through the electron transport system and is utilized by the NADP to get reduced to NADPH, isn't it? It is not returned back to photosystem 2. So it is said to be as non-cyclic photophosphorylation. Okay. So this non-cyclic photophosphorylation is also said to be as Z scheme. Why it is said to be as Z scheme? When all the electron carriers are placed in a sequence on a redox potential scale, it gives the shape of the letter Z. That's why it is said to be as Z scheme. Okay, so non-cyclic photophosphorylation, we can also say it as Z scheme of light reaction because it is having the shape of the letter Z. Okay, so if it is asked Z scheme or if it is asked non-cyclic photophosphorylation, the same thing can be written. Okay. In living organisms, energy is synthesized and stored in the form of ATP molecules. ATP is synthesized inside mitochondria and chloroplast by the process of phosphorylation, during which ADP combines with inorganic phosphate to form ATP. What is ADP? It is adenosine diphosphate. Di means 2. So 2-phosphate is there in ADP, which combines with another inorganic phosphate to form ATP, that is adenosine triphosphate. The process is called phosphorylation, and in plants, in chloroplast during light reaction, light is in the presence of light, phosphorylation occurs and it is said to be as photophosphorylation. And we have seen about non-cyclic photophosphorylation. Now we can see cyclic photophosphorylation. Cyclic photophosphorylation occurs in the stroma lamella. What is stroma lamella? It is the membrane that connects the grana of chloroplast. In the stroma lamella, only photosystem 1 is functional and photosystem 2 and NADP reductase enzyme are absent. Okay. So, cyclic photophosphorylation takes place only in the stroma lamellae. Okay. Now, how it occurs? So, here in photosystem 1, the chlorophyll pigment is having the maximum absorption at 700 nanometer. So, when light photons of red light with wavelength 700 nanometer falls in the P700, what happens? The chlorophyll A will be absorbing that light, and as a result the electrons get excited and it will be moving away from the atomic nucleus. Okay, when the electrons are excited, it moves farther into an orbit away from the atomic nucleus, and that will be picked up by the electron acceptor. that electron will not be used by that electron acceptor, but it will be passed on to the electron transport system. The electron acceptor is ferredoxin, and the electron transport system consists of cytochrome B6 and cytochrome F. And after that, the electron will be returned back to P700. Okay, so this electron is cycled back to P700 itself. That's why it is cyclic in nature. Okay, and during this process, ATP is synthesized. When the electron is transported through the electron transport system, the electron carriers will be receiving the electron and pass it to the next electron carrier, and at last it will be reaching the P700 or the photosystem 1. So during that process, when electron is transported, hydrogen ions also get accumulated, and then proton gradient is formed, which helps in the synthesis of ATP. Okay. So, as ATP is synthesized, it is called a phosphorylation, and as ATP is synthesized in the presence of light, it is photophosphorylation, and ATP is synthesized in a cyclic manner, so it is said to be as a cyclic photophosphorylation. Okay, so why it is cyclic photophosphorylation? Because the electron which is released from photosystem 1 will be cycled through the electron transport system and returned back to photosystem 1 itself. So it is said to be a cyclic photophosphorylation. This cyclic photophosphorylation can occur only light of wavelength beyond 680 nanometer are available for excitation. Okay, so during the cyclic photophosphorylation, only ATP is synthesized and no NADPH and hydrogen ions are synthesized. Why NADPH is not synthesized? Because photosystem 1 alone is present in stroma lamellae, and it lacks photosystem 2 and NADP reductase enzyme. As NADP reductase enzyme is not available, NADP cannot be reduced to NADPH and hydrogen ion. Okay, so NADPH will not be synthesized and only ATP will be synthesized during cyclic photophosphorylation. Okay. Now we can see the difference between cyclic photophosphorylation and non-cyclic photophosphorylation. In cyclic photophosphorylation, only photosystem 1 is involved, and non-cyclic phosphorylation, both the PS1 and PS2 are involved. Okay. In cyclic photophosphorylation, no photolysis of water occurs, but in non-cyclic photolysis of water takes place. Okay. And in cyclic photophosphorylation, oxygen is not evolved because photolysis of water do not occur. And in non-cyclic photophosphorylation, oxygen is evolved due to photolysis of water. Okay, and in cyclic photophosphorylation, NADPH and H plus is not synthesized, but NADPH and H plus is synthesized in non-cyclic photophosphorylation. And in cyclic photophosphorylation, electron is cycled back to the reaction center. That is, from photosystem 1, electron is released and it will be cycled back to the same photosystem 1. But in non-cyclic photophosphorylation, electron which is released from photosystem 2 will not be cycled back to photosystem 2, but it will be used to reduce NADP to NADPH and H plus. Okay, and the cyclic photophosphorylation takes place in stroma lamellae, and non-cyclic photophosphorylation takes place in thylakoid membrane. Okay, so this is the difference between cyclic photophosphorylation and non-cyclic photophosphorylation.